Hello biology! If you are watching this video, then we are having a snow day. So hope you got a little rest, extra rest, and enjoy the day, but you do have a little work to do for biology. This is just so that we can stay on track since we have missed so many days. So today would be Tuesday, February 12th, and I'm just going to go through this biology presentation with you. The slide presentation itself will also be linked on Canvas, so that way you will be able to go back through it slide by slide if you need to do so. Our learning targets today. Students will be able to understand the role of checkpoints in the cell cycle, discuss why cells have different rates of cell division, investigate what happens when cell growth is not regulated, and examine how the process of mitosis allows a cell to divide and where we would find cells more likely to perform mitosis. Please upload the evidence note for today, which is linked for you in your Canvas modules. So the date of 2/12/19, cell cycle and cancer evidence note. Please complete this as you listen to the video. You again may always go back through the slide presentation if you need to as well. You do need to submit this to Canvas by Friday the 15th. Okay, on Monday in large group, we talked about the cell cycle. So this is just a life cycle for cells, and it represents a pattern of growth, also replication of DNA and organelles, and it also includes a period of cell division. So those two main parts of the cell cycle are interphase and mitosis. To review, interphase is represented in the model with the green areas, and that's where the cell spends most of its time. During this time, the cell is going to grow. It's going to carry out its normal job within this organism and its normal functions. Notice that it will also replicate its DNA and its organelles, so it will make an exact copy of its DNA and organelles. And that is in preparation for the second main part, which is mitosis, or cell division. And that is illustrated as blue in the model. You can see by looking at the model, and we talked a little bit on Monday about the idea that there are phases to mitosis as well. And it also includes cytokinesis, or the dividing of the cytoplasm at the very end of mitosis. The goal of mitosis is for one parent cell to divide into two genetically identical daughter cells. All right, to just review DNA replication. Again, this happens during the synthesis or S phase of interphase, where the cell will copy its DNA. The cell will make two identical replicas of its DNA from the one original copy. During this process, there are two important checkpoints that occur. And if you look back at the model on the prior slide, you will notice those checkpoints labeled on the model. So the checkpoints are very important to ensure that the cell cycle continues without errors. The first checkpoint we just call the G1 checkpoint. And in that checkpoint, the cell will make sure that that DNA is not damaged initially. So the DNA is in good shape and there are no errors and there is no damage, so that it can be replicated during the synthesis process. The G2 checkpoint will make sure that everything is in order for replication. So looking at things like an adequate cell size, and that when replication happens, everything is duplicated correctly. Okay, on your evidence note, take a look at the next two questions, and you won't have a partner necessarily if you're working at home today, which you are, but think about them on your own and see if you can come up with a response. So the first question, why do you think it is important that a cell copies its DNA before it divides? So if we think about this logically, if the DNA was not replicated or copied, then we would have DNA with 46 chromosomes that would be cut in half during replication, and each daughter cell would only have 23 chromosomes, or only half the full set of DNA. And for proper cell functioning, the DNA needs to be complete. Okay, what do you think happens if there is a problem at one of the checkpoints, G1 or G2? If the cell encounters a problem at one of these checkpoints, then the cell will try to repair the problem or repair the damage. If the damage cannot be repaired, what happens is the cell may enter what's called G0 stage. And so during the G0 stage, the cell will continue to perform its everyday functions, its regular functioning, but it does not go through division, so it will not prepare for division. So really, it's kind of exiting that part of the cell cycle, and the division will not occur. Okay, so we want to take a minute to talk about rates of cell division. So by rates, we're kind of talking about how fast the process of cell division will occur. So how fast and how often. And this is linked to the body's need for that type of cell. So we're going to see that cells in our body divide at different rates. So an example would be cells in embryos or young children. We're going to see that those cells tend to divide at a much faster rate. And that has to do really with organ development and a lot of growth that's happening during those times. And so we would expect that the cells would be dividing faster. Also, we know that in embryos, those cells are becoming specialized. And so that's important. So we are making cells so that they can have these really specialized functions and jobs within the body. Okay, different types of cells will also have different lifespans. So this depends on, we like to call it the wear and tear of the cell. So for an example, in the digestive tract, the cells within the digestive tract, they will be changed over quite often. So they have a lifespan of only approximately 4 to 5 days. And so why would that be? So we're talking about like the internal lining of the intestine, for example. And so in that case, we see that the intestines are going to have a lot of wear and tear within that digestive tract. As well as the cells of the lining can encounter different toxins that are entering the body through the digestive tract. And so they do need to be replaced every few days because of all of that wear and tear. So muscle cells, or cells that make up your organs, for example, they do not have as much wear and tear, and so they are going to divide only occasionally. So they may divide only in response to cell injury or cell death, but the average lifespan of cells, muscle cells, or cells within the organs is approximately 16 years. Another example might be a red blood cell, which has a lifespan of approximately 4 months. A liver cell, 10 to 18 months. So think about this question: why might a skin cell replicate more often than a liver cell? Okay, and hopefully we're thinking about that idea of a wear and tear again. Certainly more wear and tear than a liver cell. So skin cells can get damaged, they can get worn out. and they would need to be replaced rapidly through mitosis. So a skin cell typically has an approximate lifespan of only 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, now I want to go on and just talk a minute about what is cancer. So when we think of cancer, we think of a large number of diseases. But these diseases are all characterized by the development of abnormal cells. And more specifically, when the cells, the growth of the cells is not regulated. So normally cells will grow in a very controlled manner. They come together to form tissues. Tissues will come together to form organs, and so on. But when we have abnormal or unregulated cell growth, the cells essentially start to divide uncontrollably, and then they will destroy healthy body tissue. So some of the reasons this happens is because the cell is not responding to those factors that are set in place to regulate the growth. So for some reason, it's not accepting or responding to those signals. And so what happens is we get a clump of cells that we call a tumor. And so you can see in the image here that the blue cells in the center represent a tumor forming, where again these abnormal cells are starting to divide out of control. So they're just dividing and dividing really uncontrollably. Okay, so cancer can sometimes remain localized. So that means that cancer stays in one place. And usually that type of cancer is a little bit more easy to treat because it is localized and it is concentrated in one place. Sometimes the cell can or the cancer, the abnormal cell can spread out through the body. And we call that the cell has metastasized. Okay, and what happens there is that cells break off from that main tumor, and then they can enter the bloodstream, or sometimes they move through lymphatic channels, and they can travel then to other parts of the body where they will settle and create a new tumor. Okay, so when we talk about a cell that has metastasized, we are talking about that part of it has broken away, part of that tumor has broken apart and moved to another part of the body. And that can be much more difficult of a situation to treat and become much more serious, because essentially that cancer is then spreading throughout the body. Of course, a cancer cell is not going to be functioning normally, and it's not going to be performing its normal job and function within the organism. Okay, so how does cancer start? So cancer is essentially caused by changes to the DNA within the cell, which we call mutations. So these mutations are occurring in the DNA that code for those regulatory factors that would keep the cell growth in check or regulated. And so the mutations can be inherited sometimes. They can be, passed down genetically, but not always. So sometimes they are not inherited at all, but those mutations can be caused by things in the environment, such as radiation, exposure to radiation, or exposure to certain cancer-causing chemicals, which we call carcinogens. Additional examples of things that can cause those mutations would be air pollutants, tobacco or smoking, alcohol, exposure to ultraviolet light. Other things that have been associated with cancers could be a type of virus, hormones, chronic inflammation, obesity. And then, of course, there are some mutations that are inherited. And so inherited genes are passed through generations from parent to offspring. This little chart over on the side just shows estimated percentage of cancer cases that are caused by identifiable or preventable factors such as smoking, diet, obesity, lack of exercise, and so on, pollution and so on. Okay, that is just the short information we wanted to cover with you on the snow day here. So please complete the evidence note that accompanies this video and presentation, and you will need to submit that evidence note to Canvas by this coming Friday, the 15th. All right, have a good rest of the day. Stay safe, stay off the roads if you can, and look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.